in Iran. I'm joined by Jared Mondschein, the Senior Advisor at US Study Centre, for more on this. And Jared, look, it looks as though tension at the moment at least has ratcheted down between the US and Iran, more focused now on protests in Iran from a lot of university students in particular.
That's right. There has been a change in sort of the issues that are afflicting Iran right now. Just a few days ago, there seemed to be a lot of protests against the United States. There's a question as to how much of that was organic, how much of that was sort of fomented by the government. But now you're seeing a lot of protests by young Iranians across the country who are upset about the state of the economy, and they're also upset about what happened with that airplane that was downed, because the Iranian government first denied that there were any issues related to them, that it was just some mechanical failure. Then a few days later, they openly admitted that they accidentally shot it down. It's important to note that some have said, oh, this is the Iranian government going too far, that they have finally lied openly and people are angry about it. But the issue is the Iranian government has lied for decades at this point, and the people are frankly tired of it. And so this is really a momentous occasion in Iran, but we've seen such protests before. Earlier in the past couple years, you've seen some major protests against Iran. Back in 2009, you saw almost unprecedented protests against the Iranian regime. But if there's anything that the Islamic Republic of Iran is good at, it is staying in power. And they've so far suppressed any threats to their hold on power.
I guess the sanctions, the biggest test on them right now. We'll see if they continue to bite. But you've been looking at some polling into just what voters in the US are thinking of this. Interesting to note that there is a slight favour of voters towards carrying out the assassination, but an even stronger majority saying they wouldn't approve of a war with Iran, a US war with Iran. So essentially, as long as things don't escalate, they'll still approve of the assassination.
Exactly. It's important to note that around a quarter, less than a third of Americans actually wanted to do any war with Iran. If there's anything that's almost bipartisan these days, is that the United States does not want to engage in the Middle East in wars there for much longer. It's been a few decades now looking at Afghanistan and Iraq, and the American people are tired of it. A lot of them are, and the Trump administration, the way they've approached the Middle East, I think is in some ways symptomatic of that, in the way that Trump did this assassination of Soleimani in Iran, but he did not commit for major boots on the ground. His engagement with Saudi Arabia, he says, is only because the Saudi Arabians are paying for it. He removed troops from Syria because there's no payment there. There's, in his opinion, nothing to be gained from U.S. troops there, despite many strategic thinkers vehemently disagreeing with him. So I think it really is a sea change in the way that the U.S. looks at the Middle East. As much as Soleimani and the Iranian government has really helped major aggression, violence against the U.S. in Iraq in particular, and as well as Syria and elsewhere in the Middle East, the United States, for the most part, Americans do not want to be engaged there for very much longer. They just see a lot of blood and treasure having been lost there and not much being gained.
Incredibly, all of this is drowning out what would normally be, leading all bulletins over there, the impeachment of a president, and the polling there suggests, I feel like we're on loop here, that it's just falling along party lines. I guess the interesting thing about this when you look back on it, though, Jared, is that Donald Trump does appear to have the loyalty of Republican voters, but basically all of the rusted-on ones, and that wasn't always necessarily the case.
Yeah, he has, with this, what happened in Iran, some Republicans have disagreed with what he has done in terms of killing Soleimani. And there is, like I said, a bipartisan consensus that the U.S. doesn't want to engage more in the Middle East. But exactly, on the whole, the Republican Party has some 90% approval rating of President Trump right now. And the way that things are going in his approval ratings, it doesn't look like it's changing anytime soon, despite whatever may come out in terms of evidence, whatever, even if John Bolton does testify, his former national security advisor, if he does testify in some Senate trial, I still don't think that will really move the needle in terms of somehow getting close to the 2/3 of the Senate that need to vote to impeach him, or to convict him and remove him from office. So as much as there have been some Republicans recently upset about what happened in Iran, as much as there may be some other more traditionally mainstream Republicans who are now on the outs of the Republican Party because of their disagreements with President Trump, I don't think on the whole the Republican Party is really denouncing Trump in any significant way.
All right. We have run out of time, Jad. We'll pick up on that conversation another day because the primary's heating up as well. But thanks for your time today.